Hey everybody, it's Charles from HumbleMechanic.com. Today I'm taking your questions on TD modifications, installing an intake, door handles, and more. This is episode 204 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, in order to get a question on a show like this, email me, charles@humblemechanic.com. Put question for Charles in the subject, ask the question right at the top, then give me the details of your question below. If you don't see your question on a show like this, be sure to check out the quick videos playlist on YouTube where I do one question per video. All right, let's talk about the sponsor of the day, which is CRP Automotive. CRP deals in a ton of OE maintenance and repair parts, timing belt kits, suspension components, and even fluids. In fact, they make the factory DSG fluid for Volkswagen and Audi. So check them out at crpautomotive.com. And real quick, if you want exclusive content discounts you can't get anywhere else to places like Eastwood, Black Forest Industries, S&P Automotive, Petrol Box, Kerma TDI, and more, check out the Crew Membership Program. It's a great way to help support the show and the work that I do here for you guys, as well as get a huge, awesome return on your investment and save a bunch of money on stuff you're probably buying anyway. All right, with all that wrapped up, get into the questions. First one, I left his name out on purpose. It says, hey Charles, so I have an appointment to get my Gen 1 TDI recall done. I do have a check engine light on my car, most likely due to a cracked DPF. Have you heard if this will affect the recall? I can reset the light shortly before taking the car to the dealership. The light will most likely stay off long enough to get the car into the shop. If the check engine light is off, do they proceed with the recall or do they check the readiness monitors, etc.? All right, so good question. This came in actually like very early after the recall started or the modification release started for the Gen 1. So I didn't have a thorough answer. Now I have a little bit better answer. What happens in this process is one of the first things that are done is the codes are scanned in the car. A full scan of the vehicles ran, so they're going to check all the codes in every single module. Nothing else really matters other than engine and transmission. If they find a fault stored in the engine, it doesn't really matter what it's for. The next thing that happens is the phone gets picked up, basically, and Volkswagen's called to get guidance on what needs to happen. So if you have a fault for an intake manifold, right, seemingly unrelated to the emissions downstream, if you have a fault for a DPF, 100% related to the emissions downstream, it doesn't seem to matter. The feedback that I've been getting is that customers are responsible for making the repairs pre-modification. So that means if you got a bad DPF, technically, and you're out of warranty, you are responsible for replacing the diesel particulate filter before the modification's made. Now, there may be exceptions to this. If it's an 09, DPF is part of the replacement anyway, so that may be a totally different case. But understand that these are considered one by one. There is no blanket. This needs to happen on all of them. With every check engine light on a diesel that comes in, the technician has to open up a tech line ticket and call Volkswagen for guidance. I'm sure that the folks at the VTA, the Volkswagen Technical Assistance, have a guideline chart that says if this is broken, then replace it, customer pay. If this is the problem, take care of it under warranty. But that's not going to ever get out to the public, and it sure as heck isn't going to get released to the dealership even, because, well, that's basically the same as getting released to the public. So there's not really a cut and dry answer. What ended up happening with this vehicle is the person that emailed me back. We had a little bit of an email exchange and said, hey, dude, I blew the codes out, took it in, got the modification, and left. Okay, I don't have necessarily a problem with that, and here's why. Because post-modification, ding, 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 that stuff's going to be covered under warranty anyway. So I don't really see why the customer's paying for it beforehand and not afterwards. I'm sure there's reasons. It's probably legality. I'm thankful for the technicians that at least they're getting to fix the cars. It sucks for the customer, but officially the policy is if there's a light on, the customer has to make the repair before the modification can occur. So that's the answer. Whether or not you can get it covered by calling Volkswagen, whether or not you can fuss at the dealership, well, don't waste your time with the dealership. It has nothing to do with them. They don't make these rules. they're just following them, so please don't fuss at the dealerships. But of course, the follow-up question is, why should I have to pay it now if later today it's going to technically be covered? And I don't have a good answer for that. That is the policy that Volkswagen put into place. It is what it is, right? I hate that phrase, but that is how the system has been structured. It sucks. Luckily, most people are getting back a lot of restitution money, so that'll at least help. There's no way around it. I have also heard of cases where customers take it in thinking, hey, VW is going to fix this and pay for all these parts, right? Because nobody knew what the repair was going to be till a couple of weeks ago. They're going to take care of this big repair. Volkswagen declines it, says, no, customer, you're paying for it. Customer changes their mind and then ends up taking the buyback. So I wouldn't fault anybody for that either. So it's not cut and dry. There is no black-white answer. It is a gray area. It is case by case. So if you do end up with a vehicle with a bunch of problems, they're probably going to need to be fixed, paid for by you before the modification can occur. Of course, unless your car is under warranty. Keep that in mind before you go to your appointment. And, understand that there may be some hiccups if your check engine light is on. If it were me, I would probably get the code scanned somewhere else, know what I have going in, and then maybe make a different decision going from there, because I wouldn't want to have to spend a bunch of money on a car just to get it to a point where I can get it modified and then get my restitution. You have to do the math yourself, case by case, value for value, and see what works best for you. All right, next one is from Jesus. Hey, Charles, quick question. Currently drive a 2012 GLI with a little over 80K on it. It doesn't have a tune, but I have a K&N cold air intake on it with an open can. I'm considering replacing it with a carbon fiber closed can like APR. I heard it is better because you should not get any hot air in from the engine. If that makes sense, what is your opinion? Okay, great question. So we're talking about, we have a cold air intake, right? Probably more like a warm air intake on the car now. Thinking about replacing it for one that's enclosed, and those typically are joined up at the front, so you get not really a ram air intake, but it simulates the airflow a little bit closer to how the factory designed it. From the factory, it has that cover piece, and then there's ducting that runs back and then to the airbox, and that's where the air filter lives. Is it going to make a difference? I don't know. If it does make a difference, how big of a difference is it going to make? I don't know. I don't think, okay, that is going to make the huge difference that you might be thinking it's going to make. It will probably make a difference. It'll probably drop the intake air temperatures down a little bit, but is it going to do it $300 worth or whatever these intakes cost? I'm not totally sold on that. What you could do is you could put your stock airbox back on, right? Because that's going to be closer to how the closed ones are. Get your Vag-com or your OBD11 and measure the intake air temp sensor. See what the intake air temp is on a hot day after 20 minutes of driving. Put your intake back on and do the same exact thing in the same or as close to same parameters as you could, with the last airbox, and see what the difference is. You may find that it's 5 degrees cooler. Is that enough to justify replacing it? For me, I probably wouldn't, but for you, you might. Is it 25 degrees cooler? Well, okay, now we're on the trolley of probably having a situation where it's worth replacing the intake. Is it 1 degree cooler? Probably not going to worry at all anymore ever about it. I find it interesting that we often get theory and practicality twisted into the world of actuality. What I mean is that, yes, an air filter near the engine is going to have warmer air temperatures. It's going to be pulling warmer air in. So your intake air temperature should be higher. What does that really mean, though? Is it really that big of a deal? Are you going to get 5 horsepower by changing these 2 intake manifolds? Well, you might, but it might not have anything to do with the intake temperature. It could be the design of the intake is just better. Could be the air filter is just better. There's more variables than just temperature. So whenever I see people get really excited about, like, you have a hot air intake, all right? I made the comment at the beginning of the question. Oftentimes, I think it's not as big of a deal. It can be a big deal. Odds are your aftermarket intake is probably costing you more in fuel economy than anything else anyway, or has skewed your fuel trim readings to use more fuel and maybe even back the timing down a little bit to cost you a little bit of horsepower. The only way to know for sure is to do both on a dyno. and C. And that's only one scenario. That is a pure horsepower torque readings, right? If that's your only goal. But what about around town horsepower? What about butt dyno? What about fuel economy? There's more that plays into it than that. So I understand why people say and feel the way they do about warm air intakes, right? I get it. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as most people then turn it into. Small scale, yes, race cars are designed differently. Your GLI is not a race car. It's not. My GTI is not a race car. My Passat Tiguan, not race cars. They're street cars. So ultimately, to answer your question, it's really up to you. I wouldn't make that switch if I already paid a bunch of money for an intake to get another intake. If it were me and I wanted to make good use of my money, I'd be looking at a tune. I think that'll do way more for you as far as joy of driving, or to use the dude in blues phrase, smiles per gallon. I think that'll do way more for you than changing out intakes from what you have now to a different style. All right, next up is from GLI Fahrenheit. Hey Charles, I replaced my door latch on my Mark V GLI, but when I tried putting everything back together, the small piece that is next to the door is not tight. I've tried 6 or 7 times to get it to lock into place, but it won't do it. I've also replaced the metal bracket that holds down the handle and the lock cylinder in place. I also watched your video on how to remove the door handle. Any help would be great. This is the front passenger door, and he sent a clip. Let's watch the clip. So as you can see in this clip, that little piece where a key cylinder would be is definitely not installed properly. Big surprise, right? A door latch that's bad on a Volkswagen. So we need to understand a little bit more about this. The way these work is the door skin comes off the car, you replace the latch, and then you put it back on. There is a bracket that retains those pieces inside the door. So you have the handle, then the door, then you have the bracket that retains all that stuff. That bracket can be a pain in the butt. What I have found that causes this the most is that the bracket or the skin needs to be adjusted a little bit. First of all, take it all back apart, right? Hold your handle out, rotate that screw out 12 turns, pull your lock cylinder out, set it to the side, take the door skin back off. And then we're gonna start over. Pull the little latch on the door latch to preset the tension for the cable, put the bracket on, put the door skin on, don't tighten any bolts. Start them all, and they're gonna be loose. Take and start the screw that holds the bracket on and look at the witness marks on the paint. You might have to slide that bracket forward and backward a little bit to get it in the right spot. That adjustment, that 2 millimeters of adjustment, will make a world of difference on the other side. Try that first. Get your hand, tighten it down, right? Find its happy spot, tighten it down, hold the handle out, put the lock cylinder in, back the adjustment screw out that holds that lock cylinder in. You'll hear the pop, it'll snap, you'll let go of the handle, then you should be able to open the door no problem, and then the lock cylinder should stay in place. If it doesn't, try it again. If it doesn't do it, try it again. But before you try it like 4 more times, take the lock cylinder out, or the piece that would be the lock cylinder, and look at it. Make sure it's not damaged in any way. I have seen those broken. Not super common on that gen car, but I have seen them broken. So I would do that. Make sure it's good, make sure it's happy. In fact, inspecting it while you have the door apart is probably a way better approach than the way I just said to do it. Make sure nothing's damaged and go back together with it. I have had these fight me, but it seems to be that slight back and forth adjustment of that bracket you replaced is the key here, because it's just not sitting happily right with the door. Also make sure that bracket's installed properly. If it's not all the way to the door or slid into position, that can cause too far of a distance and make it not latch. So start over, take your time, make sure everything is installed properly. I know that sounds like a cop-out of an answer, but trust me, I've had to do these multiple times too, and it's always that last time of going back together and really paying attention. Are my witness marks lined up where my bolts go? Is everything right? Is what usually solves it. The key though is 12 turns out of that screw before you take the lock cylinder out, and almost every time, 99.5% of the time, it goes back together absolutely perfect, and you have zero issues. All right, last one of the day comes from Thomas. How do I learn more about Volkswagen and using Vag-com? Hey Charles, I'm a second-year apprentice in northern BC, Canada, and I work at a good-sized indie shop. I'm wondering how I should go about learning more on VWs and using Vag-com without having many resources available. Everyone in my community hates working on Volkswagen vehicles except for the old gentleman who works at the VW dealership when we had one many, many years ago. He now works across town at the Subaru dealership. The closest thing to a VW dealership in my town is 7 hours away, and I don't really want to move that far from home and leave a great job. What should I do? P.S. Thanks so much for your podcast. It has helped me find my groove in the shop and has also achieved top marks in my first 2 years of school. Right on, dude. Congratulations. Good job on the hard work. That's way more you than it is me, but thank you. I will take the kind words. So how do we learn? We do. Easy. We need Vag-com. No brainer. And then we need cars. We need to practice. We need to practice plugging in cars. Especially if you have a Volkswagen, if you own one, easy. If you don't, find a friend that owns one, easy. If you don't have any friends or family that own a Volkswagen, it's a little more challenging, but we could still do it. So first is mentality. If you want to learn how to fix Volkswagens at your shop, you need to be the Volkswagen dude now. Take them all. Doesn't matter what the job is. Oil change, I want it. Brake job, I want it. Really squirrely, screwy, check engine lighty, electrically problem, I want it. That's how you get better. That's how you learn. You plug Vag-com into every Volkswagen that comes in the door, whether it's in for a check engine light or not. Plug it in, run faults. See what kind of faults it's got. If it has faults, take that, go to Rostech's wiki page, and search the fault and see what it means. See some of the repairs. That's the mentality you need to have. You need to be the Volkswagen guy now while you're learning how to be the Volkswagen guy. This is sort of my mentality when I started working on Touaregs. No idea what I was doing, but I was going to be the Touareg guy, and that eventually paid off big time for me. So it is then in turn my advice to you. If there's not a dealership for 7 hours, dude, you have a gold mine of fixing Volkswagens. Plus no one else wants to work on them. Even better, you'll be a hero for a while, and then everyone will realize you're making a bunch of money fixing Volkswagens, and then they'll start to hate you because, well, you're making all their money on cars that they didn't want to work on, right? So practice, 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 practice. If you have your own Volkswagen, create your own problems. Turn the key off, unplug a sensor, turn the key on, start the car, run a scan, and see what kind of faults you get. You might find that you've seen this fault before. Well, now you know how it occurs. Pinch off vacuum lines, see how fuel trim changes. All those things. Basically create the bugs in the car and then diagnose them. It's easy for you because, well, you know what the problem is, but take the approach that you don't know, or take the approach you do know and see how it changes what's happening. What happens when you cover up half the air intake with your hand and let less air through? You should see a change in fuel. What happens if you crimp a soft fuel line? Does it increase injector pulse width? These are all things that you want to look at. Rostech's wiki page is such an awesome resource for finding what problems mean. It's not going to diagnose a car for you, but it's going to tell you more about the fault, well, honestly, sometimes than the factory repair manual does. So you want to use the resources that are available. They're all out there. You don't need to be at a dealership to have these resources. If you run into a car that you can't fix, you can buy a one-day subscription to Irwin, E-W-R-I-N, Irwin, and you can download all the repair manual information on that car. So that's another route to go. Look through TSBs on Volkswagens to see some of the new stuff that's happening, the things that dealers are communicating to technicians. The resources are out there. They are generally not easy to find. They are generally going to require you to do a lot more legwork than, let's face it, you probably should have to, but that's what it takes. So again, man, practice, practice, practice. That is how you get from knowing nothing to being the expert on the topic. It's all about practice, learning, and studying. I don't really have anything, oddly enough, more to say to that. Get your hands on the cars. If you can't find broken ones, start breaking them and figure out what it looks like when they're broken. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments down below. You know what to do. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Always appreciate that. Don't forget to subscribe right here on the YouTube. Ding the notification bell so you know when a new video comes out, or over on the blog at humblemechanic.com if you'd rather email updates. If you want exclusive content, discounts to places like Sonic Tools, Eastwood, I think I said at the beginning, MT Knives, Kermit TDI, so pumped to bring those guys on, Mechanic, and more. We're right about 12 discounts now with more getting added soon. Check out the crew membership program. You also get access to the training manuals from the classes that I teach, which is really awesome. Those are $355 a pop. You got 4 of them or 3 of them right now. I'm about to add 3 more very soon, so keep an eye out for that. You can also follow me on the socials on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, of course, Snapchat. Guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.